God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, let's see if I can do this without setting myself on fire here. Jesus is at the Festival of the Dedication. Does anyone know what that is? This is Hanukkah. This is the Festival of Hanukkah. The Festival of the Dedication is when the Jewish people reclaimed the temple that had been taken by Roman hands. And if you know anything about the Hanukkah story, you'll know that this exterior nation came into the nation of the Maccabees, and they seized the temple and they put false gods in the temple. And so the Maccabees, which are a community of Jewish people, came into the temple and kicked out all the Roman soldiers, and they had nothing but one lamp to last them for an entire week. And that was how long a siege would need to take place in order to reclaim territory that had been taken. So this festival that Jesus is at is a festival of insurrection. It is a way to celebrate how God has chosen certain people to be a part of the kingdom. And people ask him, how long are you going to keep us in suspense? Who is supposed to be a part of this kingdom? We're here, it's Hanukkah, we're celebrating that we're supposed to be a part of the kingdom, but you keep telling us other people belong here too. Who are these people? And Jesus answers, my sheep will hear my voice. I know them, and they will follow me, and no one will snatch them from my hand. It doesn't really answer the question. So let's talk a little bit about one of the sheep that we know Jesus chose. That's a certain sheep named Peter, who we're named after, our namesake. We get introduced to Peter, Simon Peter, when his mother-in-law is gravely ill. He comes up to Jesus and he says, my mother-in-law is ill. I'm not sure if she can make it. Please come to my house and heal her. And Jesus does. Simon Peter is a fisherman. And so Jesus tells Peter, you've seen what I have done. Come and follow me. And Peter's like, I'm not so sure. I'm thinking about that. And after much hemming and hawing, Peter says, okay, I'll follow you. So he does. But the whole time Peter is following Jesus, Peter wants to be the best. He wants to be the favorite son, the favorite disciple. It's Mother's Day. We know about sibling rivalry. Surely in your own family you felt some of this tension, and that is what Peter has with the other disciples. Throughout all 4 Gospels, Peter keeps asking Jesus, who is the greatest? Am I the greatest sheep, Jesus? Am I the greatest sheep? And finally, Jesus says, Peter, you are the rock on which I will build my church. The sheep will hear my voice, and they will know. But what does this sheep do? When Jesus is at his most vulnerable, when all hope is lost, when the empire and the church are coming to kill Jesus, they come to Peter, the rock on which Jesus will build his church, his greatest sheep. And Peter says, I don't know the man. I don't know him. 3 times, this sheep who has heard the voice of his shepherd says, I don't know him, until that rooster crows. Then Jesus dies. We don't hear about Peter for a while until we get to that fateful Sunday morning, where the women of Jesus' flock have gone to the temple to anoint his body, and they see that Jesus is risen, and so they run to Jesus' most trusted sheep, a sheep that has heard Christ's voice, and they say, he is risen, he is risen, and Peter's like, I don't know about that. I gotta check this out for myself, because this can't be possible. So he goes to the tomb, and he sees the empty cloth, and he, instead of building the church, goes into an upper room and hides. He, with doubting Thomas and all the other disciples, hide while the women go about town telling people that Jesus is alive. The sheep will hear my voice. and no one will snatch them from my hand. So Jesus shows up in this room, and he says, peace be with you. And he breathes the Holy Spirit upon them, and he says, go out into the world, tell everyone what God has done, be my voice to my flock. And so the disciples leave the room, and where does Peter go? He goes back to fishing for actual fish. He's on the boat, which is what we heard about last week. He puts his nets down on one side. Nothing is coming up. And so the stranger calls to him from the beach and says, Peter, put your nets on the other side. And this guy's like, I don't know what this guy's saying, but all right, I'll try it. I've been out here all night. And he puts his nets in the other side, and lo and behold, this huge catch of fish comes up, and Peter is amazed, so he runs to the beach and he says, who are you? Still, he does not recognize Jesus. Jesus has come to him at his mother's house. Jesus came to him at the beach once before. Jesus came to him in the upper room after the resurrection. Jesus is coming to him again. The sheep will know my voice, and yet this sheep does not recognize Jesus until Jesus makes him breakfast. Peter says to him, go out, spread the news of what God has done. And Peter, he's starting to get it. Okay, maybe I should. But Jesus has said all along, go to all nations. You are the rock in which I build my church. So Peter, everyone knows that Peter is the greatest disciple, the beloved disciple. And so when this family, Tabitha's family, sees that she's sick, they go to Peter because Peter is still not doing the work Jesus had called him to do. Peter is still sitting in his house waiting for God to show up. And they say, disciple of Jesus, please come to my house, take care of Dorcas, because this woman is both a Jew, Tabitha, and she is a part of the Roman Empire, Dorcas. She has two names because she lives in two kingdoms. She lives in the secular kingdom of this empire, one that is ruled by this government that set Jesus to die, and yet she still worships in the tradition that Jesus worshipped in, that tradition that celebrated Hanukkah. Peter has a choice here. He can acknowledge that Jesus has called him to serve all people, both the Jews and the Greeks, but what name does he use? The Hebrew name. Tabitha, get up. He denies that he is called to serve all people. The sheep will hear my voice, and no one can snatch them from my hand. This is not a perfect sheep. This is a sheep who is flawed and who messes up and who denies God's call over and over and over again. This is a person who denied Jesus quite literally and continues to ignore Jesus when he's standing at the beach right before him, refuses to acknowledge the gift of the resurrection. This is a sheep that messes up every single day. And yet, the Holy Spirit worked through Peter and raised Dorcas, Tabitha, from the dead. It's less important that we are sheep. It is more important we have a shepherd. Our shepherd comes to us over and over and over again when we don't have it right, when things aren't working out, when life is hard and difficult, when we're grieving and in pain, when we want to deny our call, when we are uncertain of our call. Jesus comes to us over and over and over again. It's not as important that the sheep know his voice. What's most important is that the shepherd speaks to us over and over and over again. You don't have to be a perfect sheep. No one is going to snatch you from God's hand. God is coming to you in Jesus, in word and sacrament, in relationships and prayer, because you will forever be a part of God's flock. When we are in great despair, it is easy to forget how far God is going to come to be with us. We want it to happen on our terms. We, like Peter, want Jesus to come to us on the beach, come to us in the room, come to us where we are, and God does that. But sometimes that doesn't happen on our timetable, and that is hard. And we may feel lost and forsaken. We may wonder if we are actually a part of this sacred flock. But the promise Jesus gives us in baptism, the promise that we talk about this whole season of Easter, why we say Christ is risen over and over again so many weeks after Easter, is because resurrection is before you. Your shepherd is looking for you. Your shepherd is searching for you. Your shepherd is calling your name and working to bring you peace. And while we can't see it while we're out in the wilderness, that doesn't mean God has stopped working. The shepherd is calling to you and will find you. No one will snatch you from God's hand, not even yourself. No one snatched Peter from Jesus' hand, not even himself. He messed up so many times, and yet he was the rock on which Jesus built his church. If you could deny Jesus and send him to death, like Peter did, and still be redeemed, is there anything that you could do that your shepherd won't care for? Today is the day. Every day is the day. We remind ourselves whose we are. No matter what other label you have, whether you're mother or daughter or son or friend or sister or whatever, it doesn't matter what your label is. The most important title you will ever have is child of God. That is how you become a part of the flock. Because God first called you his child. Not because of what you do or what you will do. Not because of the mistakes you make or the bad choices that will follow. You are a child of God because Jesus chose you to be a part of his flock. And nothing that happens to you will snatch you from his hand.